And we want to continue the conversation now about the accident and Amtrak with our panel. Amtrak train number 188 had barely left the tracks, Brit, when Republicans and Democrats in Congress were pointing fingers and blaming each other for the accident. Take a look.
It's all about funding. It's all about funding. Well, obviously, it's not about funding. The train was going twice the speed limit.
Speaker Boehner speaks with massive ignorance. Anyone who knows Amtrak knows it has been robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Brit, there's obviously a legitimate debate about funding for Amtrak, but any sense that had anything to do with this tragedy?
Based on what we know now, funding was not a factor. The failure of the installation of that safety system was not a funding issue. There's no indication that the accident was caused by anything other than excessive speed, and that the engineer had sped up inexplicably in a way that would have made the train jump to tracks, whether they were new tracks or old tracks with that much curve. So that whole back and forth, it seems to me, was pointless. And I think, you say Republicans were blaming Democrats. I didn't hear that. What I heard was Democrats blaming Republicans and Boehner responding to that.
We asked you for questions for the panel, and we got this on Facebook from Jay Klein, who writes, why does the federal government prop up a business that continuously operates at a loss? Kirsten, take it away now from the accident. Given the fact that last year Amtrak lost $1 billion on revenue of about $3 billion, isn't there a serious problem?
There is a problem, but I think one of the problems is that we're spending a lot of money because there are actually conservative Republicans who want us to be having the trains going in areas that make no money, in states that really aren't using them, and the money that is actually made is in the corridor that we live in, and they want to use that money to reinvest it into Amtrak. So if we want to fix the problem, we should probably start with shutting down some of those routes that nobody's using.
All right, Karl, I'm sure you dealt with some of these issues when you were in the White House. What do we do about Amtrak?
Well, I think Kirsten is absolutely right. The Northeast Corridor makes money. We have a quasi-public-private company that has no stockholders, that has two groups of management, the Amtrak management itself and then the rail administration. We ought to take the Northeast Corridor, privatize it, allow it to turn into a private company, would make money, get access to the capital markets.
Basically from Boston to D.C.
Boston to D.C. and increasingly a little bit further south and maybe a little bit elsewhere, but let it make decisions as a private company. Last September, the Inspector General said of the Transportation Department looked at Amtrak's situation and said it didn't do a good job of managing its capital projects and priorities, and it couldn't even figure out what those priorities accurately were. That's because it is neither a fish nor fowl. It ought to be made a private company, and a private company would make money on the Northeast Corridor, as it already does, and use that money to upgrade their facilities and equipment.
Juan, a lot was made of the fact that the day after the accident, House Republicans in committee cut $1 billion from the president's $2.5 billion request for Amtrak. On the other hand, during the stimulus package, Amtrak got President Obama's stimulus package $1.3 billion more, and that sure didn't fix things.
Well, but again, you got to remember, there's money that has to be spent out in these areas where people aren't riding the trains, but the Republicans insist we got to keep these routes open. At the same time, they're cutting, and when you cut, you have to understand that Northeast Corridor is in a deep hole. They had a lot of debt. They have a lot of things to pay off as well as to rebuild. We need to reimagine Amtrak. There are a lot of jobs, and there's need for infrastructure spending, but that's a curse word right now.
I got to make the trains run on time. Thank you, panel. See you next Sunday.